So I'm gonna be judging the Ricoh GR3 and 3X as a video camera, and I'm gonna be judging the ZV-1 as a photo camera. Hi guys, my name is Matti Sulanto and I'm a photographer. And in this video I'm going to be comparing the Ricoh GR3 and 3X and the Sony ZV-1. But it's not going to be the comparison you are expecting. This Ricoh GR3 and 3X, both cameras, they are designed for street and travel photography. And the Sony ZV-1 is designed for easy vlogging for video. But in this video I'm going to reverse the roles of these cameras. So I'm going to be judging the Ricoh GR3 and 3X as a video camera, and I'm going to be judging the ZV-1 as a photo camera. And that's why I'm filming this video on the Ricoh GR3, the one with the 28mm equivalent lens. And all the photos I'm sharing in this video are shot on this Sony ZV-1 camera. Let's first talk about the Ricoh GR3 and 3X as a video camera. How do they perform as a video camera? These cameras are not really designed for video at all. First of all, they only shoot 1080p up to 60 frames per second, which is not really that bad, but today you would expect at least some sort of 4K performance or capabilities. This video I'm shooting at 1080p, 24 frames per second, and then I'm upscaling it to 4K in post. However, these cameras have some features that are way better than the Sony ZV-1 video features. And one such feature is completely separate settings for video and photos. And that is very important if you plan to switch back and forth between video and photo all the time or frequently. Then it's essential to have separate settings for both, and especially if you're shooting JPEG photos, then it's a big hassle on this camera, on the Sony, to switch all the settings for your JPEGs, and then when you start the filming, you have to switch all the settings back for your video. So it's a big hassle, and I have to wonder a little bit why Sony did not include that feature on this camera. Also, the stabilizer on the Ricoh, both Ricoh, is as good as the stabilizer on the Sony, if not even better. And the Ricoh also has a built-in ND filter, which is great for video, and it helps to keep the shutter speed close to that 180-degree shutter angle even in bright light. But one major downside is that you have no manual exposure control for video. The only exposure mode is P, which is a downside for any kind of serious video work. And the video autofocus on the Ricoh GR is kind of slow and not very reliable, and that is a major downside, especially for this kind of work that I'm doing right now. I'm all alone and I can't see the screen of the Ricoh because it's a fixed screen, and I can't confirm the focus at all. I don't know what it's doing, and sometimes it can drift all over the place, and that's why I'm using the 1 meter snap focus for this, which is essentially a manual focus set at 1 meter. There's also no external audio option on the Ricoh GR3 or 3X, and for example, right now I'm using my old iPhone and an external microphone to get a decent audio for this video. The video footage itself looks a bit soft and not very detailed, but the tonality is quite pleasing to my eyes depending on which picture profile you use. At the moment I'm using the positive film picture profile or photo style, whatever you want to call it, and I think it looks pretty decent to me. But overall I would not recommend the GR3 or 3X for any kind of video work, except for some kind of emergency. If you really need to get a piece of video footage and you have no other device, then by all means use your Ricoh. But even then, if you happen to have your phone with you, you're going to get better results with your phone. So not recommended for video. And now let's talk about the Sony ZV-1 for photography. This camera essentially is the same camera as the Sony RX100 Mark V in just a different wrapping. There's no viewfinder, no flash, and the user interface is much simpler. There's no ring around the lens and no mode dial and so on. So this is clearly designed for easy vlogging, easy video shooting. But this is surprisingly good for photography too. Just put it on P mode and you're good to go, and you'll be very happy with the results. P mode makes a lot of sense on a small sensor camera like this, because you can't control the depth of field that much anyway, and the P mode selects the optimal aperture and shutter speed and ISO for every situation. And this camera also has a built-in ND filter, and you can let the camera automatically engage the filter when necessary, and that keeps the aperture at around f4 even in bright light, and it happens so that the sweet spot of the lens regarding sharpness is around f2.8 or f4, in that range. So you'll get the best results if you leave it on P and leave the automatic ND filter on. But this camera also has a very handy function or feature designed for beginners who don't understand f-stops or who don't want to understand f-stops, and the feature is called, it's called background defocus. And what it does, it opens the lens wide open in any situation whenever you hit the C1 button, which has the function pre-programmed on. And with the P mode, I think it's a really handy feature and pretty much the only manual override you're ever gonna need with this camera, because whenever you hit the C1, you get the shallowest depth of field possible with this camera, and when you hit the button again, you're back to normal P mode. Very handy and useful, just in case you want to have the shallow depth of field possible with this camera. But of course, a small sensor camera like this is never the right tool if you're looking for that really shallow depth of field and creamy bokeh. The image quality on the Sony ZV-1 is very good, and it's not far behind Micro Four Thirds, for example. The high ISO performance looks really good, all the way up to 6400, at least to my eyes. I understand that the ISO usability is very much a personal matter or opinion, but to me 6400 still looks good on this camera if you shoot raw and you do not underexpose your pictures. The lens has a 24 to 70 millimeter equivalent angle of view, and the maximum aperture is from f1.8 to 2.8, and I think optically this lens is quite decent for such a tiny zoom, and your pictures are going to look crisp and sharp and everything, but the lens is nowhere near the prime lens of the GR3 or 3X. But then again, this is a zoom lens. It gives you a lot of flexibility in many situations. You can zoom and change your angle of view whenever you want within the range. So all in all, I would say that the Sony ZV-1 is surprisingly good photo camera, even though it's mainly designed for vlogging and video. I originally bought this only for video, but now that I tried it for photography, I think I'm going to shoot more photos also on this camera. It felt so good. So if I was choosing a camera for only photography, I would definitely choose the Ricoh GR3X. And if I was choosing a camera for only video, then I would of course choose the Sony ZV-1. And if I was choosing a camera for both photo and video, then I would also choose the Sony ZV-1 because it does both pretty well. I hope you enjoyed this little unusual comparison between the Ricoh GR3 and 3X and the Sony ZV-1. And if you enjoyed this a lot and if this was entertaining, please consider buying me a cup of coffee. There's a link down below for that if you don't live in Finland. And also, please like and subscribe if you haven't done that already. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.